Hi, Jeff Gillette with AmericaTodayOutdoors.com. Today, we're going to be talking about the shaky head. Oh, no, not that. The shaky head. That's this guy right here. All right, many of you may have heard about the shaky head lure or the shaky head jig. It's been one of the most successful ways of catching fish on the pro bass tours here in recent years. What exactly is a shaky head? Well, we're going to be using a jig, something like this. This happens to be a Gamma Gatsku. Notice it has a much larger hook than your normal crappie jig because after all we're going after bass. This one here happens to be a round head. It's painted green and it is an 1/8 ounce version. Now another version is a shaky head jig that looks something like this. This one here has your offset hook. If you remember our Texas rig segment, this is a very similar hook, and it has a football lead head attached to it, and it's molded like this. And of course now this one here is a much larger version. This happens to be about a 1/2 ounce with a number 3/0 hook in there. So they do come in various sizes. And then we have this version of the shaky head jig. It has the football head, it has the large bass hook, and then also has this little feature. This little feature right here is a spring, which your soft bait screws onto the end of it and helps keep your bait on there. So let's show you how the shaky head is assembled and how it works. So here we have your basic components of making up a shaky head worm or shaky head jig. Like we said before, the jig is what's really is the trick. Now of course we want to have either floating worm or floating crawdad, something like this little guy right here. Now floating worms, the easy way to tell them apart is most of your hand-poured worms are floating worms. Some worms are made in injected type molds and they won't have this flat side here. This flat side here is a good indicator that this type of material is a floating material. Okay, what normally happens is you want to take this type of jig. Now this one here, we have this little corkscrew type of thing. It's like a little spring. And what happens is you put your worm on it and you just twist it right on. Okay, so what we've already done here for you, here's one that's already complete and it looks something like this. Now what I'm going to do is take the hook back out because a lot of people get confused right here. Now if you all remember our Texas rig segment, again you look at the radius of the hook and that is where the penetration is going to start into the body of the worm. Compress the worm forward, get the hook in there, and then pull the worm back. Okay, now that worm should be laying fairly straight. Let's go ahead, let's go to the tank. We'll show you what this thing looks like. Inside the tank, here's what it looks like. Now we're just shaking the line ever so slightly. See how the worm is moving? That is what you're wanting your worm to do. Anyway, practice this. If you have a fish tank, it's great. Go ahead, dunk it in the water and practice this motion. Now when you get to the point of tying your line on, you want to make sure that your line is cinched so it comes right from the top of the jig head right here, so it comes straight on out. You don't want it so it's out this way, you want it so it's out this way. After all, what's going to happen when this thing's underwater, and the reason why it's called shaky head, when you twitch your rod, this thing's going to twitch up and down like this. Here we're in the tank once again, and we're going to try some different variations of shaking our lure. Now, you'll notice that we'll try to move it up and swim it around a little bit, but the key thing is don't move it too much from the position because during the winter, the strike zone is very, very small. And during the winter and during the cold weather months when the water is all below 50 degrees, this is where the shaky head really shines. Now, other variations of the shaky head, you're not just limited to worms. You can use just about any soft plastic bait that you want to. The key thing is the word shaky head. This thing's going to be shaking up and down like this. Now right here we have a pretty good size 2 bait. Now this is hooked on a lot larger shaky head. And of course once it's in the water, it wiggle up and down like that. And here's a Gary Yamamoto creature bait. And when this thing's in the water and you're shaking it, it's going to look something like this, and of course these little flappers are going to be up and doing their thing. Okay, so here we have several different variations of the shaky head. We have the critter bait, you can have a tube bait, or you can have the ever so famous shaky head worm, and he'd be going something like that. Here we are at one of our tournament lakes in western Oregon. The water's high. It is about, maybe late April. temperature somewhere about 48 degrees. Now this is where the shaky head really shines. Because out here we're actually looking for some keeper fish. Conditions are tough enough when the water is cold. The shaky head isn't really known to catch monster bass, but if we can catch a keeper bass on any of our local tournaments, let me tell you, we are happy fishermen. Not a big one, but definitely one. Okay.
Well, he's not a big guy, but he's a little guy right here at Ben Irving Reservoir.
Anyway, thank you, buddy.